Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, friends and family from the city of Guatemala, from the community Betor. Greetings to everybody in Colombia, Argentina, El Salvador, Costa Rica, and along all Mexico. Thank you for being with us. May you have a joyful Shabbat. Before we start our reflection, and we're translating into English, thank you, Aleph. I would like to answer some questions that they sent me through WhatsApp. They were asking me, what is the profound meaning why the Lord asked for the sacrifices? Why does the Lord like the sacrifices with all the animals that they ask for? And the answer, we can find it in Micaiah Micaiah 6, verse 7 and 8. Micah 6, verse 7 and 8. As the prophets ask. Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgressions of my body to the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. When we talk about the Lord and the requirements, we have to understand that from the Lord there's an emptiness, and that emptiness becomes a need, and He doesn't need anything. The gifts that He asks from men, it's the need from men to give. And again, it's not the material, it's the attitude that man has to cultivate in his heart. He has to die so he can reach his purpose. And that's why the Torah says that he needs to be humble. And that's why that's given through the sacrifice and through giving, through dying, and a death that brings life. That's what's interesting. And death gives life. If we see, for example, in Judaism, they are against accepting the sacrifice of the Messiah as a man, a human being, because the Torah says that the Lord doesn't accept a human sacrifice. But they also say, through the study of the Parasha Shmini, the red calf, and after this is the death of Miriam. That means that the death of a holy person erases sin. And in this parasha, it talks about the death of the sons of Aaron. According to the interpretation, that death brings something positive to the people. So it's contradictory that they say that Messiah and his death is not accepted because they don't see it as a Jew. because of how it was image sold by Rome. So the life of a just man does help to clean sin. So the sacrifice is a death. We all have to die to something, and that's something we will talk about today. So we can please the Lord, and He's not asking. He doesn't want anything physical. Jeremiah says that He didn't ask anything to your fathers about sacrifices, just to be obedient. It may seem incongruent, but that's how it is. The material, the physical, is only a means to reach the objective. If you remember that through the material we reach the infinite. It's about cultivating an attitude. Another question. The Lord commands their people to sacrifice and to make, but He doesn't want sacrifices. It's because of their spiritual level. And in the sanctuary, the tabernacle, it was given because of the dissension, spiritual dissension of the people. And because Moshe asks, despite of that dissension, the presence stayed with the people through the tabernacle. This was impossible because the Lord said, I'm not going with you, because if you commit sin again, I will not be able to be with you. So if the people came down because of their spiritual dissension, that means that so they wouldn't die, the tabernacle was created. But Moshe was at a different level, at a higher level, is what I explained to you. If this is what the holiest place, and then the ark inside the holiest place, and then Moshe inside of the holy place explained to Aaron, don't go in here without the incense, because if not you would die. But he was there. But he told his brother not to come in without this incense. If not, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but the laws that were given to the people did not apply to Moshe. If you remember, this is the Ein Sof. This would be the bulb that I have here. More limits because we're retracted from the objective. More commandments, more limits. And the people was in this level, and in this level Moshe was located. And that's why the offerings and the commandments of the sacrifices, that Aaron, as a holy priest, in charge of everything that was done in the tabernacle, so everybody could see and could say, wow, who wouldn't want to be a holy priest? Even though they asked him for a sacrifice for himself before starting his work as a holy priest. And every time he was going to be in the tabernacle, he had to present a sacrifice, something that wasn't asked from Moshe, because he was at another level. As we have spoken in the past 2 weeks, and now with 3 weeks, we have to take away the image of looking at the temple as something that's wow, but something that we can aspire. And like the Jewish people still pray for the restoration of the third temple. But we're going to put it down here because the priesthood of our Lord Messiah, Yeshua, is above all the priestly work that was done. What happens with the blood of the sacrifices that were given and done? Because that was one of the miracles that was done in the temple. Because if you do a barbecue and Notice flies start coming when you have bloods, and in the tabernacle there were sacrifices all day. Can you imagine the smell of blood continuously? And there was no flies. That was one of the miracles. There were not any flies in the tabernacle. And yes, of course, they washed the tabernacle and the altar, but they couldn't put blood over blood over hundreds of years. They had to be washing it constantly, but the miracle is that there wasn't any flies. So, according to the tradition, after answering the questions, I need two voluntary. Could you help us, please? Shama, please come with me. And Hasid too, please. One stands here and the other stands right in front. And one lady, please. Volunteer. Should I choose her? Rahel Batsari. Is she here? There she is. You guys prefer a presentation, so I don't have to choose you. Take your right hand and put your fingers like this. Like level in Shilla. She's gonna laugh. Now I'm going to talk to you about biology. I will talk to you about a cell that she has. She has many, but I will talk about one of the million cells that she has on the tip of her finger. Each one has one particular. They have many, but one corresponds in their index finger in a specific place. Biology tells us that the cell keeps genetical information. The cell that I'm talking about, we will give it a name. Okay, we're Peaky. That's gonna be the name. That's the name of the cell that Rahel has in her finger, has her genetical information. Not only about herself, about Peaky. That it's a cell of an index finger of Rahel. But if you take that cell and you put it in her foot, and that cell is going to migrate back to her index finger because it was created to be in that place. But it doesn't keep only that information, but it also keeps information about all her body. And that's the principle of the clonation. Because of the information of one cell, they can create another cell. Is that okay with the people that understand science? So there we have the cell, and it can't be anywhere else but in her index, and it's going to be the name Peaky. Hasid has another cell in his index finger, but we can call it Peaky because, you know why? Because it's another cell that it has Hasid's information that's not the same as Rahel. And that gives this cell a different information. What are we going to call it? We're gonna call it Pico. Hasid, your cell is called Pico. It keeps all your information, not only. And then we also have a cell in Shama's finger. Just like the others, we can call it Piki or Piku. We're going to call it Bak. We're going to call it Baka from the hood. The interesting thing is, with all of this example, any happiness or sadness that Shama might have, that emotion, it's going to generate an information and a feeling to its cell, to Baka. The same is going to happen with Piku, and the same is going to happen with Piki. Biology tells us that all these electrical charges that the cells receive go in one way To modify, how is it? What's the name of when you eat? What it's the act of the when you digest? I forget the name. The capacity to digest, because the cells eat and they also extricate. So they're going to affect the metabolism. That's the exact word. They're going to affect the metabolism. Rahel is going to be happy. Hasi is going to be happy. But Shama is going to be happy. But that the way the happiness is going to affect Piki, Piku, and Paka will be different. And they react in a different way until the same stimulation, emotional stimulation, but they react different. And that's why everybody is individual, because everybody reacts differently. It's completely different. Even the neuroscience tells us that that cell is affected by all the information of the family, of her experiences that she might have, and everything with her education will affect all the information that receives from all of her cells. Do you understand? And through the neurons, that all of the information that all the body has, all the body is affected. Now, there's a book called The Emotions Against Cancer that demonstrates how the thoughts affect the information of each cell, to a degree that the writer explains, change your thoughts and your biology will change. Like the book of the Proverbs says, what man thinks, that's what he is. The Talmud says when man is not thinks he cannot do something, or he thinks he can do something regularly, he is right. Why? Because the thoughts become in something biologically correct and real. If I say I'm sick, I am sick. If I say I'm not sick, I'm not sick. There's attitudes that affect biologically are affected by each cell. The interesting is that this cell does not die from nothing. This cell is the result of another cell that came before that one, and that one inherited the information genetically. So this cell is the result of another cell that had died. And we go back to our topic that we die, and it's a death that gives life, and that it's renewed. If there's any doctors here, please correct me. And there is a renewal. There is a death that is needed to give life. In the Talmud, there's the same thing that happens when you sleep. If you don't sleep, there definitely you're going to die. Sleeping is like dying, where the soul rests and it renews itself and it comes with energy. So every morning we resurrect, we are renewed, and that's why we have a blessing when we wake up. We thank the Lord that the soul came back to our body. Everybody following me? This is very important. The information that is in the cells of Rahels are charged with a lot of information. Please don't get bored. This is very, very emotional for me. It has been shown by some studies that was written by a person. And the study was done with 76 people that donated their hearts and they donated blood. It was an extreme case that the organ of the people that was donating, a lady received a heart from somebody else, and it has been shown that the receptor of these organs receive attitudes from the person that were donated, because these cells were charged with all this information to to the result that when this lady received this person's heart, she ended up having a relationship with this woman's that donated her heart, his ex-husband. In some way, the genetic of this cell is the result of from another cell that came before this one, and the information that this cell has will create another cell. I don't know when this happens, when the cells, how many cells are renewed in 1 year. Anybody have an idea? Tell me. Every 7 years? Every 7 years, the cells died and they renewed again. Every night from 10 p.m., our body starts to regenerate, and that's why we need to sleep by that time, because that's when the body starts regenerating. I'm talking about one cell that has life, that it has a metabolism, that it has a genetical information. And these scientists from the neuroscience say that changing the conscious, we can change the information of genetic information. It can change from one cell to one human being. The human being, like these young people here, are the result from somebody that gave them to life. All the culture, all experience, all the education that these kids' fathers have made them up. One time I explained to you what happened if I would not have married Hava, if I would have married somebody else. How would I be? My older daughter asked me. Well, I told her she wouldn't exist because she's the result of Hava and Yehuda. And if Yehuda married somebody else, then I would have another daughter, not Haim. So Rahel is the result, not only genetically, emotionally, and information from Amniel and Sari, but it also has to have the emotional state of when she was conceived. That's why all of our kids are different. Now Sari will have, Rahel will have many children, and I know she has many, and I know the Lord's going to bless her with many children, and that information will go to another generation that will be charged with Rahel's information with her husband, that the Lord will give her that fear of the Lord, and in that generation the genetical information will continue from her parents too. Have you guys heard of the inherited diseases? It's the same thing. The information goes from generation to generation. Like a cell that unconsciously is, and it simply reacts, and that's how sicknesses go through and react. And we don't notice that the attitude we have, that it's so perverse, it's the same one that I had with my parents and my grandparents, because that comes from generation to generation. And the only way we can change the genetical information, not only of the cell, but all the whole, the human being, is by taking conscience. And that's what's important. Because Shama, if I ask him, Shama, who are you? The answer, he will look for it in his mind, first in his parents, or where he was located, where he is educated. And there is where identity comes from. The problem is when the identity of the person that is acquiring it gives suffering to the person. That means that is going down until it disappears, and this generates an emptiness, an existence emptiness inside. And that's why the answer of the question, who am I? It's hard to understand and to answer because it will depend on many things that make me up, my identity. By like all of the cells, Piki, Piku y Paca, they have a position within a body. Let's say that Rahel is the universe of Piki, Hasid is the universe of Piku, and Shama is the universe of Paca, but that's the universe. But that cell has a place in that universe, and without that cell, that universe would be incomplete. It will not function correctly. Therefore, Piki knows who it is, knows where it places, where under the universe of Rahel, and it starts giving according to what the universe of Rahel needs. And that means take control of our responsibility. In our parasha, to Aaron was he was the holy priest. He was going to represent the Lord before the people. And the first thing that comes out in our parasha is that they put the 12 names of Israel on stones upon his shoulders. All of the positions, all of the places that we have within the universes have a responsibility. Until we don't accept the responsibility, we will not start giving from ourselves to the wellness of the universe that we belong to. Do I make myself clear? Now, Vicky knows who she is, where you are. Maybe she knows, the cell knows more than you. I recommend you to study a little about kinesiology, the movement of the muscles. The body is capable of telling me what's good and what's bad for me, if I should or not do something, just with a simple exercise. Because we lost the instincts that we had when we were born to know what's good and what's not. And it's the same type of information that all these cells have, but we unconsciously don't understand now. How does Rahel relocate? She has to take her identity, her personality. What point of reference will she take when her parents or her brothers, when they change? When possibly she was born in Guatemala, but maybe she's going to move to another country, maybe that will affect her identity, possibly. How do we know now where we belong and that how our identity is steady? It doesn't change, it doesn't move. The only reason is for you to move and to look towards the center. Look to the center. And everything that's over there, your grandparents, your parents, because they try to guide you in your universe, and then they will not tell you who you are now. It will not define you. What will define you is the Ein Sof, and to everyone, because the only identity can only be defined through Kadosh Baruch Hu and through anybody else. And then your parent and your family and the place where you live everything is temporary. Everything could be today, and maybe tomorrow it doesn't change and it doesn't matter. Because what defines me is my relationship with the Ein Sof. And therefore, your place, your identity, your personality is based on your relationship with the Lord. And everybody else just becomes the scenery of where we project this. You can sit down. They're going to go with their fingers standing. Look at the idea I bring to you. I will be sanctified, says the Lord, by who are close to me. And in presence of all the people, I shall be worshipped. The degree of holiness that every person projects in this world will depend of their closeness to Ein Sof. Once it projects the relationship it has, they will worship the Lord within the people. I will put an example. Mihaya, his people from work, they tell him, wow, you're so wise and you know so many things. And that talks good about him, but if they ask him, and did your dad show you that? And they say yes. And then they can imagine how his dad could have been. Or maybe if they ask him his teacher, I will be sanctified by those who are close to me. And they will, with their actions, will praise the Lord before all the people. Our relationship with our brothers, with our parents, is only the consequence. It's only a thermometer to measure the will of the Lord within us, but it shouldn't define it. Ravi Zuckerberg tells us that there is a change before Abraham and after Abraham within the creation. Because Abraham understood that the apparent multiplicity of beings, of aspects of the reality, material reality, are diverse levels of one of the same reality, that's the Ein Sof. When we talk about the identity, who I am, we understand that intellectual starts asking within itself that the neshama, it's a vase, and inside the vase there's an emptiness, and inside of the emptiness, what is it? There's nothing, and nothing is Aim, and Aim is the Lord. And that nothing, that particle of Aim that it's inside of neshama, is different, and it reveals in a different way according to the one that there is in Shama or in Hasid or in Rahel. 3 different people. Do I make myself clear? But Rabbi Zuckerberg says that Abraham understood that every one of them manifested a reality, different reality, but of a same reality from the Ein Sof. That's why we start looking at our brothers not like somebody that's fighting against us, but somebody that is helping us. And that's why it's not allowed to make any image, because the image makes something parges, and it makes something particular and temporary, and instead of integrating the eternal. And that's where we start integrating ourselves. And when we start strengthening our identity. For example, when we see a person, let's talk about an older person. I should have brought a picture, but what do you see Wood or a tree? What's the difference between wood and a tree? The tree, the wood, means death, static, something that's past. The tree is the hope, the renewal, the hope to receive a fruit. When you see a person, the person has a past. And to people that are ignorant, the past defines a person. This person is what the past has shaped. So what I'm looking at is a piece of wood. And we have to have the capacity to see that every person has the capacity to die and to renew itself. Because our past and our mistakes from this past do not define us, they just shape us. But the human being, like the cells change constantly, the man has the capability to renew himself constantly. But for that, they have to wake up their consciousness. Rahel has a genetic that is, if she's not quick enough, it will define her. The same with Shaman Hasiwan. And they will only be messengers to one generation and to another to share the same information, unless they wake up their conscience and they will be responsible of what they have to live. And then they have to decide what information that they receive will they accept and what will they not accept. What information will they transfer to their children and what will they not transfer? Our parents could have had a sickness. That doesn't mean that I should have it, unless that I'm only transferring genetical information. And then what my dad suffered, I have to suffer too. And my children will suffer it too. And successively. And that's the only way we can change that, is taking responsibility of what we have to live. To die is needed. People that talk about neuroscience say that death is constantly. We breathe, inhale, exhale. There's an instant where we're not inhaling or exhaling. Try it. There's a moment when you start feeling afraid, and then that's where you just exhale. There's a moment when you don't notice, but there's a moment where you don't inhale or exhale, and that's death. That's needed. And also when our heart beats, there's a moment where there's no movement. It's a moment of death. That if we paralyze, we die. But a death that brings life is needed. And constantly, the tabernacle shows us, instead of presenting continuous sacrifices, it's through a renewal. That's why our monthly calendar is with the moon. Because the moon renews itself every time. And it comes every month. And that's why it has Kodesh. It means renovation versus static from the solar cycle. We see from something that's apparent, something that defines you, the death, like I call it, gives life. And that's why it's forbidden to make images. For myself, I can make an image of myself, but I'm failing. I'm not doing it right. I have lived this, but we have to rediscover the potential that's within us. So Ravi Sukerwach says that the liberty comes through the point of taking responsibility of what we were given to live, while man start continue excusing themselves, like the people that were right here, if they say that their parents defined them. And that's why we make responsible other people of our identity of what we are. But when they change and they turn and they face to the Ein Sof, they don't have anybody to blame to what they are. Starting at that moment when we're accountable of our responsibility, that comes the responsibility where we can reach the infinite. And this is, to me, it's surprising. You know, that I quit gluten for some weeks now, and huge changes have passed. And I'm going to tell you a little bit. I'll go back to my life so I can share. The first time I lost weight, when I put into a change of the culture of eating, changing my lifestyle. I was sweating all night. When I went to sleep, I would leave the bed wet because I was sweating. All my life it was like this. After I lost weight, I understood that what happened was, what kept me like that was carbohydrates or flour. Maybe when I had pizza, it would happen again. And with my stomach bloated. It was always like that, but I didn't have conscience until that time. And I created the consciousness. I gained some weight back. That I'm not attracted a lot by pizza or that type of food, flour. Now, with my wife, that she's in a regimen, I decided to take away the flours away, gluten-free diet. Before, I used to drink 5 glasses of any type of natural drink during each time and last week I noticed that I was having my lunch and the drink was right in front of me, cold, and I didn't have any desire. And I finished eating and I wouldn't drink anything. And I started to drink something, but I felt like I felt pressure to drink it. And then I told my daughter, this is happening. And she told me, because there's a shock when you eat something warm and then when you drink something cold, that's a shock for the body. And it seemed that you were intoxicated by so much gluten that I lost consciousness of it. And when I start detoxing, I start taking conscience back. But it was natural. It was extremely the change that on Wednesday, I didn't drink anything. I didn't drink any liquids during my lunch. And on Thursday it was even worse. You're not going to believe me. I asked for water. That's amazing because I was shocked and I was asking what's happening to myself. And when somebody's asking me, do you want something? And it's not like I'm tasting. It's like I'm asking my body if my body accepts it or if my body wants it. Haim's friend was telling me that this is rediscovering your body because each cell is different. And that's where we fall into religiousness, because my body says no to coffee. The cell Piki doesn't like coffee, but Paca no. But then we make it a religion. No, coffee's bad. We standardize something religiously, and that's not how it works. Who can deny that somebody that smokes will die of that? I have an uncle that died at 87. He smoked all his life and he never got sick, not even a cold. So not everything is bad for everybody. We have to recognize what's good and what not good for my body. What produces good and not bad inside of me? That's not natural. We don't even know what's natural. That saying that everybody has to suffer the same, we want to chop our kids like they're the same. And no, everybody's different. In real spirituality, the individuality is not taken. We potentialize it because everybody's different. Everybody comes from a Christian background that's different from a different from each one of you comes from a different situation and have genetically information that's different. I can't grab everybody that everybody's the same. I have to have the patience, I have to have love to know and to potentialize you every time even more, and your weaknesses are being strengthened with patience and love. And that's why the community makes it seem that's disordered. And then, no, it's not a disorder. It's a respect that in the difference we can be united. I don't know if I explain myself. We can't commit the same mistakes. That's why in medicine we do the same. We share a medicine that's good for me, but it might not be good for somebody else. And people can say that it's proven. For example, for me, coffee's not bad for me, but my wife can't drink it. It's not good for her body. We are different, and we respect that individuality and that difference. And that's what we have to learn. Know each other, know our differences, and love us exactly as we are. We don't want to adjust the other person as how I am. We don't want to give the medicine that I take to somebody else. That person is different. And the effect inside his body will be different. What makes me constipated will make you get diarrhea. So when I talk about digestion, it's not only food, but it also talks about the energy and the emotions, the situations that the relationships generate in each one of our lives. I will put an example in my home. Somebody calls me, and somebody called me from a different country. I had the experience now. They call me from a country that they made a mistake and they need to rectify. How do I rectify? Or how do I make it up? Then I start analyzing. Do you know that 10 pesos in Argentina is not the same thing as 10 pesos in Colombia or 10 colones in Costa Rica or $10 for people from El Salvador or the 10 quetzales for people in Guatemala? And I'm not talking only about the value of our trading according to our money trade or with the petroleum value, but the value within the same country according to the everybody's how they react. These 10 pesos can have a lot of value to one person but not to another. That's why important in Vaikra says when they talk about the offerings of Sham, when they tell Aaron to present according to your estimation, and that's the variable. I can't propose an expiation system for this because for the same mistake in one person in Argentina or in Colombia, because their situation is different. When somebody wants to be part of Bedor from another company, then I talk about them. I talk to them about their background, about their family. So when they call me and ask for advice, I give an advice, but not something that's flat. But I can't give the same advice to everyone. Everybody's different. Everybody has different weaknesses and different abilities. And that's what's wonderful of the creation of the Lord. The multiplicity that is sustained in the Lord's unicity. And based in His unicity, we know the essence of each person, that what each person has to give, so they can link to the Lord according to the people who's close to me. I will be sanctified, and before all the people I shall be honored. But every person needs a different type of work to come closer to the Lord. And the religion only standardizes. Everybody's has to be the same. It cuts off. Here, somebody doesn't keep the Sabbath, can't come in. Everybody has different potentials. Everybody is fighting against something different in their interior. Everybody's fighting with traumas emotionally, with conflicts intellectually, family, that have given us genetic information that tries to define us and make us to be opposed to everything that's good and just and that's good before the Lord's eyes. Only taking consciousness of each self can generate a change between two generations, the one I was with before and the one that comes after me. Let's be conscious, each one of us, of the way that our parents educated. I don't want to put their kids against their parents, but let's not let be that information that defines us. But let's the Torah and the Ein Sof has to, and that's what Rav Shaul says, putting our eyes in until we reach the statue of the perfect man, the Ein Sof. Based in this, we measure ourselves. And because that is permanent, it's unchangeable. We're not going to suffer any changes that are emotional or stabilities. We will reach the stability psychologically, because that's what will define us, has to define us. And for this, we need to understand that there's a death that has to happen every day to renew ourselves. Remember that their rabbi told him that until they did not recognize their weaknesses, they will not be able to overcome them. I'm very conscious of the education my parents gave me, conscious of the good, and also aware of the deficiencies. I have even used the bima to let it go, to solve conflicts that, thanks to the Lord, I have been free because I recognize them, I face them, and I changed the genetic information that has been given me. But what is my parameter? What is correct? And the Torah and the Ein Sof is the guideline. I can't give the Lord to, I can't be thankful to the Lord if I still keeping value of everything everybody has put in me. You know where the genetic information that was put in me, you know where it took me? To a marital crisis after 3 years when I was married. If I didn't take consciousness of the responsibility, I wouldn't be close to reaching 25 years of being married. I had to change this from the moment that I took the responsibility of what was happening in my marriage. In that moment, I signed the liberty decree for me. I didn't care what my mom and my dad put in me. how they influenced me, but I took the responsibility and to be I decided what type of man I wanted to be for my wife and for my daughter. Let's take responsibility and stop blaming our parents, work, the situation that we're living. We are responsible of everything. We are responsible of everything that our words and our actions generate. And then go back to Parasha when it talks about the animals that are pure and not pure. The same way that I can't sit at a table with these commandments, I can't sit at a table. And I'm going to use the word and I'm not that the psalmist talked about. I'm not going to stuff myself. The same way I can't act in a spontaneous way, acting according stimulations from the exteriors, I have to react. I have to analyze before I react because I have to be responsible of my life. While I continue blaming others of what I live, they will not be a Passover dinner that sets us free. Whoever takes responsibility of their life, we know that we need a miracle because we recognize our incapacity and that we're not capable, and then we come forward to this Passover dinner with a humble heart. Only the person that it makes themselves responsible and recognizes their incapacity to come forward can go humble with a humble attitude to the dinner of Passover. Pesach. And that's the attitude. Then I invite you so we can cultivate our individuality. Yes, we're different, number one. Number two, my past doesn't define me. To my wife, they recommended her not to marry me. If to my daughter somebody like me comes to her, I wouldn't recommend it to her. But I changed. They saw me like wood and I was a tree. And it doesn't matter how many mistakes a person can make, we can change. When you judge according to the past of a person, you are committing idolatry. You're making an image of something, and you can't have an image because images partialize and it freezes the reality that something happened already, and we make something static when something is dynamic. So when we look at a human being, when I see somebody that's interested in my daughter, I have to look at a tree. I have to look something that has potential, something to be created, because I'm the example of that. And that happened to me years after. Somebody from the community, we were in PriceMart, presented me to an uncle of his. And I said hi, we were talking, and when we said bye, I said, I know this person. Where do I know this person from? He was the person that told my wife not to marry me. And you told me. And look at us now. That's it. People make mistakes. Because we put tags on people. But if we are in this, we have to look to everyone like a tree, somebody that has a potential. Every person that walks through this door, I look at a potential. I don't notice all of your flaws. I look at the potential inside that person. And that testimony is for me because I see that person coming in through this door. There's something that the Lord put in his heart that he made him come through this door. And my job and my task is to find that potential. That's my function. And I invite you to look at everyone like a potential, like a vase that the Lord can renew just like he renews the trees. So our past doesn't define us. So our past can shape us. But we have to take consciousness and accountability and responsibility so we can go forward the dinner of Pesach looking for a miracle year after year. Let's pray. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, Lord of the universe, we thank you for the liberty you have given us, liberty from our own wickedness, liberty from the same labels that we have let other people put upon us. Help us to find our identity according to your will. Ribono Shel Olam, we want to be close to you. We want to sanctify your name and there honor you before everyone, the whole world. Please help us. Please help us. Help us. So we don't lose sight of that person that's called the given of Emunah. So we don't lose sight and we fall into ambivalence. Thank you for manifesting in each one of us a degree of your light. Give us sight to show each one of our brothers your light, please, Holy Father, so we can be instruments of yours to help the renewal of each one that walk through the doors of this community. May the peace and love given through our Lord Yeshua stay in each one of us in a whole and amen.
Shalom a todos, bendiciones. Colombia, Argentina, Dios, shalom, bendiciones, México.